This is Mari Robeson of Love Lulu Creative, a podcast that supports and celebrates artists and creative entrepreneurs while giving back to the community in a unique and meaningful way. This is episode number 12, and I have such a good episode for you guys today. Today I have Kerrie Kelly. She is a fellow Cal Poly alumni, and she is one of the most talented interior designers I think I've ever met. And I've actually been so lucky to actually meet her in person. We're both West Coast gals. But Kerrie, she is so talented. She has collaborations with so many companies like Feizy Rugs, Coyote Outdoor Living, Go Home Ltd. She's a brand ambassador for Roburn, for Sherwin-Williams, Crossville Tile. I encourage you to go to her website because I cannot even list all of the things that she has done in this short intro here, but she's so talented. She's also a spokesperson for Zillow. She is a national board member to all of the American Society of Interior Designers, ASID, and actually we really talk about that on this show, which is super interesting and helpful. She's a member of the editorial board for Furniture and Lighting, Decor Magazine, many other things. So we also kind of talk about her work in media and kind of connecting the consumer and the designer with the information from these companies that are creating these brands that we all know and love. So it's a really informational interview. She's so generous with lots of wonderful advice as well. She's a lovely soul, and I'm super excited to share her amazing talent with you today. So stay tuned for a very, very fun episode with the beautiful Kerrie Kelly. Hey, Kerrie. Hi, and welcome. I'm so excited to finally have you on the podcast because I adore you. And I'm so excited because you have a million things going on and we have a million things to talk about. So, yay. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Let's catch up. I mean, West Coast girls, we got to connect.
Right? Well, yeah, okay. I want to actually start with that. That's kind of interesting that you bring that up because we are both in California and you are in Sacramento. I'm down on the Central Coast, but have you always been from Sacramento? Because I feel like we talked about this. You were in New York for some time.
So my hubby, my sidekick, is from New York, and I have a deep love for that just as a part of my career. But I'm born and raised in Sacramento, California. The only time I was away were the 4 years that I came down to your area to go to school at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo.
Yay! Go Mustangs!
You got it.
We're both the Cal Poly alumni. I love it. I love it. Oh, so that's interesting. So you went to Cal Poly and then you decided to go back up to Sacramento.
Yes, and I remember being in San Luis Obispo and telling people that and having them be like, why would you do that? But now Sacramento
work up there.
Well, yeah. And I mean, just visiting back down to San Luis Obispo, why would I leave there? The ocean, the lifestyle, everything about it, I really appreciate. But yeah, I needed to come back home and get some work done. And I've always appreciated my roots here in Sacramento.
Yeah, I love Sacramento too, and I did decide to stay here. So,
yeah.
Okay, well that's great. So, when you went to Cal Poly, what was your major? You majored in interior design, or?
Yeah, interior design, and back in the day, it was actually under the home economics department, and so I learned how to cook at the same time. But I also really learned to navigate a bit of my personality in that the classes that I took for interior design, the construction management side really spoke to me, and the architecture side, not so much. I was a little bit too technical for me because I really do like getting out in the field and collaborating with trade contractors and creating a vision for a client, but having a lot of hands in it and a lot of experts in their field associated with the project. So, yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people don't really realize how much an interior designer is a project manager.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah. I mean, the guys don't want to think that we're running the show, but no.
Well, I remember when in my days of working at Del Webb, I would roll up in my car. I had red boots on, and I could read their lips. Here she comes. Here we go. But I think our education at Cal Poly and even taking time to go out in the field and really understand what an electrician does and what a roofer does, and all the trade contractors who put together a beautiful home what their world is like. And once I took time to really understand that, the collaboration that I've been able to have over these 25 years, I've had long-term relationships with success stories associated with them because of the relationships.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, once you get your team in place, it makes it really easy to move through projects effortlessly, which is what a good interior designer is supposed to do for their client. So I absolutely agree with you on that. And you have to have the conversation at the very beginning if it's a new build, because what the end look is going to be. So you have to know the lighting plan and all of that. So that's really great. So what did you do after you graduated for Cal Poly? Where did you go next?
So when I graduated from Cal Poly, actually, it's interesting because I worked while I was at Cal Poly. I worked for Howard and Judd Interior Design. I was an intern there. I worked for an upholstery company where I really understood fabrics and furniture construction. And then I worked for Pacific Coast Kitchen and Bath, which was fantastic education. They called me the Princess of Porcelain. So I got to really understand brands like Kohler and Brizo and Delta and all those companies who I still use today. And once I rolled out of that, I really wanted to understand visual merchandising and how to put things together in a beautiful, effortless way. And so I worked at Macy's and Nordstrom doing store windows for about a year, and then went to work for Ralph Lauren Home Collection for 5 years. And that's where my love for New York evolved and percolated. I mean, going on buying trips 2 times a year to New York as a 20-something-year-old with, big sunglasses on as if I knew what I was doing was an education in itself. And in working there, I was able to do someone's house who worked for Del Webb Corporation. And that's when I moved over to Del Webb and became their design studio manager and in charge of their visual merchandising and models for Northern California and Nevada for 7 years. So
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's my patchwork quilt for you.
Well, it all ties together. I mean, you do have a very Ralph Lauren kind of vibe to your work, but it's definitely more you. But that's super interesting. And so then you go and you do that. And then when did you start Kerrie Kelly Design Lab? Like, when did that begin? Did you at some point go, I'm ready to just launch on my own and just be a solo entrepreneur and just do it that way? Is that how it happened? Or
so I think it was always in my blood. And actually 25 years ago when I started with Ralph Lauren, it was a different time then. It wasn't, there were franchise stores, and the Sacramento store was one of those. And the family that owned it at the time really went along with my vision that I'm not going to stand here and have this be a retail store where I wait for people to come in. I am going to go out as an interior designer, and I'm going to promote this product, I should say. And because of the price point and because of our area, I don't think I could have been successful standing there waiting for someone to walk in. There needed to be a service attached to it.
Absolutely. Right.
So once I got into people's homes, this, again, 25 years ago, Ralph Lauren didn't have lighting, didn't have paint, didn't have flooring and rugs and carpets and such. So I would go sell the furniture and the wall covering and the bedding that was available and the fabrics at that time. And then as a side hustle, the franchise owners allowed me to sell the other components of the home as an interior designer. So I did that on nights and weekends. And then when I moved over to Del Webb, they allowed me to do the same thing because every client was coming through saying, I want my house to look like the model. And that didn't just mean the finishes. That meant the furniture, the artwork, the rugs, what we did in the model. So because it wasn't a conflict of interest, they said, sure, lady, do your night and weekend thing. And that's what became my business. And ultimately, when Pulte acquired Del Webb, I took the side hustle full time.
Oh.
Yeah.
About when was that? What year was that?
So that was probably 2009. I was,
So right at the dot bomb, you decided to launch a business.
Yeah, amazing, right? And at the same time, I was writing a book for Sunset Publications.
Oh, wow. What was that all about? What were you doing with them?
life is so funny. And, I guess you don't need to ask me why I don't have children now, because I was doing these were my children, the book. And
Oh God, seriously, we haven't even touched on all the things you've done. My goodness. Go on. So
well,
what were you doing?
well, I was writing a column for the Sacramento Bee for our newsletter on interior design. And, some point in time, I said, I think I should take these columns and turn them into chapters and pitch the idea to someone. And, Menlo Park, Sunset Books, Sunset Magazine, just very close to the two of us where we live. I walked in there and I told them that's what I thought. They said, okay. And, I fell over. But what I brought to the table, and I have to say, and I know my love for this organization, the American Society of Interior Designers, I said, I know that, 2009, this time, publishing is not, at its height, and there's not a lot of money in the industry when it comes to books and such. So would you consider that at that time, I think there were 32,000 interior designers in the organization. Would you consider a call for entries of certified interior designers that could offer photography to be included in the book versus sending a photographer out and paying for that? We know designers want to be published, and I think this would be an excellent way to do it. And so when you see that book, 10 years later, but when you see that book, you'll see a lot of ASID designers who were able to be published. And we were able to put a lot of information at people's fingertips who didn't necessarily want to hire an interior designer, but wanted some of those secrets of how to put a home together.
Oh, it sounds like a wonderful book. And so now you are a national board member for ASID.
Yeah.
Doing that? Have you been doing that for a while, or how does that work?
Yeah. So on the board for 2 years. October will be the end of this term. I'm director at large, and just having a fantastic time. We're getting ready to head to KBIS, and our board meeting will be there, and we'll connect with all those brands we know and love and see what's new and what's out there and do our trend spotting as we always do.
Okay, so now it's kind of making more sense to me how you have the interior design background and the visual part of it, but now I'm understanding more that media side of you, because you are you do a lot of writing for different magazines, and is something that you're currently still doing a lot of?
Yeah, so I'm on the editorial board for Furniture, Lighting, and Decor, right. And then I write for Style Magazine, and just do a lot of writing for different brands, either behind the scenes or for sponsored articles and that sort of thing. But in going to school at Cal Poly, I never knew that writing. It's not like I went to journalism school or something. That was something that came along in my tagline being everyone deserves great design. And for me, that meant, yeah, you can hire me and I'll come out to your house, but it also meant let's provide content in an educational way so that people can do things themselves, so that they can be inspired. And that was through writing the articles for the Sacramento Bee, which evolved into blogs and the book and that whole thing, which has really given a lot of exposure to brands and working with them, whether that's for trends and that sort of thing, or just promoting brands and letting people know what's new and what's next out there in the world.
Yeah, so you're kind of really connecting the dots for people, which is great, because I think a company, let's see, you work with Roburn, which is one of my absolute favorite companies to work with. But it's an education, because it's kind of an interesting product. You have to explain to the client, why it's so many benefits to that product. And so you doing that with these brands is really helpful for them. And it's helpful for the client on the other end of that, or anybody.
Absolutely. And even designers, it's interesting as my career's evolved, where I've kind of pulled away from the pure residential design and pure commercial design in having those brand relationships like a Roburn, or there's a great example, Mendota Hearth. They have an excellent product. Designers don't know about this product. So how are they going to speak designer in order to reach that design community? So crafting how they pitch projects, or crafting how they work with designers and helping them be a success, but then also having designers have access to this that they never necessarily knew about a product before. It's interesting. Maybe someone looks at me now instead of like, oh, she's an interior designer, we're in competition, as more so, oh, she's a resource and aware of some brands that I may not know about, and what's out there, again, what's new, what's next.
Again, super, super helpful.
Yeah, I mean, big on the no drama, let's do education instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really excellent what you're doing with that. So, okay, goodness gracious, you're so multifaceted. Like, I don't even know where to begin with you. Okay.
Well, it's just fun to sit in this industry, and I think the older I get, the more I realize there is no roadmap for this career in interior design. And I think you're much the same way, where there's so many different avenues you could take, and there is no right answer, but you want to live it and experience it and to see what really feels great with you. And I think that's where we succeed.
Absolutely. Wow. Okay. So the design work, and then you have you kind of do the trend spotting and the writing in the media, but then you also have your own, like, a ton of collaborative product lines.
Yeah.
Like, Lord, do you ever sleep? Like, I seriously,
I do.
And I'm going, what the heck? Like,
no, I'm a big 8-hour a night sleep girl, so that's good. But I am a batteries in, batteries out. We're game on, or it's over. That head hits the pillow and we're done. But
that's great, though.
Well, back in the, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to ask you about some of these collaborations with like Coyote Outdoor and Go Home Ltd. Like, how did those all come? Are you licensing with them, or are they a collaboration? Did they come to you and say, hey, we like your style as a designer. Can you give us specs on like this rug line, and what's it going to look like? Because they know you're in the industry and what's trending. And so did they come to you like that, or did you approach them like walking into sunset? Yeah. Like, how did that happen?
So I would say probably 4 years ago, the licensing thing was red hot. It was really becoming a thing. And I had some deals on the table that I didn't necessarily want to navigate what contracts looked like and that sort of thing. I wanted to be a part of the conversation for sure. But I wanted to have the relationship with the brands that were offering things, and I wanted to develop the product. I didn't want to have the technical contractual money conversation. I just wanted to do the work. So with that, I hired an agent. And during that time, we really fleshed out some deals. I don't love that word, but deals, I guess you could say, with brands that I was already specifying, that I was procuring product from, and I knew and loved. And Go Home was definitely one of those brands. It was a price point that spoke to my clientele. It was an aesthetic that, and still is, that I adore. I love that they're out of New York. I love that the G and the O in Go Home is for golden oldies, where the true antiques are in their family business, and that Go Home those are the reproductions. And that we could take sketches and they would take a booklet of them and take them around the world and come back and say, did you mean this? Is this what you're thinking? And we just, they're there's a father figure overseeing everything, but they're a young group that I just adore working with. And they're they're kind of gunslingers out in the industry. They're willing to take chances, and it makes for a fun collaborative relationship there. Similarly with Feizy, there was a contest to design some rugs, and I was one of 4 designers who was able to, quote unquote, win the contest. And then I was able to stay on and create some outdoor products with them that really spoke to our design aesthetic. And especially since we're out in California, the outdoor thing made sense. And then with Coyote, like you mentioned, similarly, I was introduced to them through my work with Cosentino. And again, that outdoor story, California girl. We really believe in entertaining outdoors and taking that next level beyond furniture and fabric, that we want to entertain and have the cocktails and the grill and the smoker and all of those elements that really create a wonderful environment outdoors. And so that, made sense for my brand and the collection that we've put together with them for Furniture Outdoors.
It's so pretty and I need it.
Well, and that's again is affordable, I think. And it's sitting out there in the rain right now in my backyard, and it's doing so well. That's something I'm proud of. So,
oh gosh, my like Adirondack chairs are flying all over the place. It's so windy. It's crazy.
Yes.
Well, kudos to you. I'm so proud of you. Like, wow, you've done so, and we're just like touching on the tip of all the things that you've done. And anybody who's listening to this, you have to go to her website because she's really you're such an inspiration to the entire design industry and so knowledgeable on so many levels. I mean, one, to be able to know how to design a house or a residential commercial facility, and then to be able to know how to design a product and work with licensing, and then to be able to speak on it and write about it and do media. It's like, holy cow. I mean, you're like 10 people.
And I was like 10 people. I mean, I would say not too long ago, our business ramped up where I had 12 employees. And I think it's taken a while to navigate. I'm back down to 1.5 employees and plus me. And again, where this industry doesn't have that rule book or that handbook, it took a while to realize, you know what, I think I would do better not to have a storefront, because how often am I there? My name's on the building. People are walking in, is Kerrie here? She's not here. She's on an airplane. She's at KBIZ. She's at High Point, whatever. I didn't want to let those people down in that way and not be able to show up to their homes and that sort of thing. Put something out there that wasn't real. And I celebrated being able to support designers and set them up who had worked for me for years, set them up with their own design libraries as a spinoff from what we had at Kerrie Kelly Design Lab, and have this team that works remotely, and then hire out work now where I become the client versus the employer. And I really like this idea, and it's been a big change for me and a simplification of life that allows me to do really well for ASID and for the brands that I work with and for the clients that we do choose to take on.
Get it.
There's a little zinger
I get it. Yeah. I mean, I had a shop with my name on it too, and people would come in and be like, where's Mari? Where's Mari? And I'm like, I wasn't there. And I was out, doing the design service. So it was, I think, we all kind of have that dream of what that would be like. And then you do it and you're like, okay, did it, was in it. Now I want to do something different. And, I completely understand that. And it can become easily, if you let it all consuming, and because there's so many great opportunities. And now with the internet, I mean, you can connect with basically anybody. So even more so opportunities. So it gets a little more difficult to stay focused and balanced with the rest of your life. You're so much more than just doing your work. You're a sister and a wife, and you've got other things and a friend going on. So
absolutely.
Okay, so now we're going to get to the soulful part of it, because I really, really love, you sent me an email when we were talking about this the other day, and I looked at your signature and I was like, that's exactly how I feel about things. And what you have at the end, it says design impacts lives. Now, I have my whole philosophy on that, but I would love to know why you feel that that's such an important thing that you would put it on every signature in your email.
Well, you know what that is from? That's from ASID. And
really?
So it is. And so that has been our driving force while I've been on this board, and something like you speaks to me. And ASID as a resource, and I'm going to be coming up on my 30th year as a member, which is unbelievable to me. But they have been really the backbone of my business. I always use the example, how many times have we gone to a client's house and they've asked us to do something, and wide-eyed we'd say, absolutely, yes. And then get in the car and say, oh my gosh, who's on my speed dial that I can ask how I'm going to pull this off? And that's how we learn. And ASID has been that community that I've tapped into and called, who has allowed me to do things that I would never have dreamed of. At one point, I was a spokesperson for them and interviewed by Wall Street Journal and New York Times. And, it just them putting me in that light has been amazing. So with that, they have case studies on their website that really show how design impacts lives. And I think today, as designers, yes, we are in an Instagram feed and showing the pretty all day long, but there are other layers to it that are so important that we contribute as designers. And it's very related to the functionality and to wellness and being human-centric. And what does this space that I create as a designer do for me and do for others in that wellness vein, whether that's through lighting or the air quality, the products that we're specifying. The Design Impacts Life idea takes it next level, beyond things that a lot of designers think about. And so I think it's important to get that not only in front of our design community, but our vendors and our clients, and make them aware and educate them about this.
I'm going to share something kind of personal. I really, like the Buddhists say, that your space is a reflection of who you are, the person that lives there. And around the holidays, I decided to rip out my carpets and kind of do a big remodel situation. Yeah. And I have had my closet in my living room for since then because of life circumstances, dealing with some, my father being ill and my mother. And so but just like yesterday, I was like walking through, and I told Bill, I'm like, I feel like we're hoarders. This is not good. And my environment is so important to me for my clarity of mind. And I really, really had a moment where I looked at the space and I said, this is not good. Like, things are not going to get better until I can get all this stuff put away. Yeah. It's just, finding a minute in the day when you're caring for somebody to organize and put things, what is it? The magic of tidying up, which I've believed in my whole life. It's just, I'm just seeing a real true correlation to chaos and clutter.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you.
And how that design impacts lives is yes, it absolutely does. And how it can also be super healing when you can create that environment that is beautiful and speaks to your soul and restores your soul.
Yes, for sure. And I always say, if my house is clean and put together and everything in its place, I can do anything.
Right.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, like I was saying, whether it's the circadian lighting or the daylight that's coming into our house, there's just so many layers to all of it. And I think that's why it is so important that we have these conversations with each other to tap into each other's expertise and knowledge. And that's been a big part of my ASID relationships. I just got off a phone call this morning with one of my board members, helping navigate our industry. And, it's just extremely important to me.
So do you feel then, it sounds like, I was never a part of ASID. I felt like I was moving so quickly through all the projects I was working on that it was something I never went to focus on. But do you feel that well, obviously I'm hearing from you, it's a great resource to become a member of that if you are seriously going to be pursuing interior design full time. But do you find it to be necessary?
For me personally, it's funny. Everyone that's ever worked for me has taken the path of ASID. I always required that education component to be in place in hiring people. Mm-hmm. And I never did it necessarily to quote unquote get business. I don't know that any of my clients necessarily even knew what ASID meant. But for me, it was necessary, with such an emphasis on education, to be a part of, to be on that cutting edge of, to hold me accountable when it comes to continued education. And it's just benefited me in a way that I never even expected. And to me, it's the organization of interior design, period. the one that you should be a part of. And
I agree.
I can't say enough about it. Yeah.
So that kind of brings me to the question, I have a friend who is super, super creative, has a very creative business, who would like to switch and become an interior designer. I mean, what would be your advice to her? What would you say to her?
Back in the day, I would say really layer on the education conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And today I've changed that conversation a bit. I think you should talk to the companies that you're interested in working for, unless that's something that you want to do more on your own. But if there's a company that you want to work for, I would have the conversation in asking them what they require, because often the answer is they want to train you on site. And they have a different version of education than going to college to get your interior design degree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think over time, we'll see organizations really tapping into a global idea. I think there's so much to learn, not even within the United States, beyond, as we work with Cosentino, to go to Spain and see what they're doing in Spain, or just to travel the world and get that kind of an education and to collaborate with brands who are overseas. It's a different thing. So
yeah, definitely.
there's so much to learn in so many different ways that I really would target who you want to work with or for, and pick their brain on what they would require from you in order to be hired.
That's great. I love that. I think that's really good advice. Okay, so we're on advice. So what was the best advice that was ever given to you, and by whom, when you were not in your business?
There have been moments where I go back and forth on this, but I would say the one that sticks with me is the advice from my dad. And he's painted me a couple of these little paintings, and it says, "Leap and the net will appear."
I love that.
And yeah, you got to have faith along the way, especially in an industry like this. But I think because of that mentality, I've been able to test and try everything I've ever dreamed of. And whether it's had great success or pure failure, I don't ever question I have no regrets. I don't question in my mind, wonder what would have happened if I would have tried that. Like, I don't have those conversations with myself. I've been there, I've done that. And I feel like it's all part of the journey. And like I said, that patchwork quilt that's got me here, which I'm feeling really good about right now.
So what's up then? What are the next couple of years going to look like that you haven't tried?
I think I'd like to serve on the ASID platform in a different way. I'd love to be able to serve and contribute to that organization more in these next few years. I think deepening the roots in working with the brands in not necessarily a public way, more a behind the scenes way that helps with consulting and reaching our interior design market is something very important to me. And then I think our interior design business, I have a young designer who works with me, and then Jill, who's worked with me for 25 years. She was actually the client that came into Ralph Lauren that suggested that I work for Del Webb.
Wow.
I helped shape my path there. We really have found success in working with home builders and tapping into that Del Webb knowledge to do model homes, and just really to continue to build that business versus the residential one-on-one client business is where we're headed. And I have books within me that I still want to write, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that later.
I love, there's a saying that says, and I live by this, that I want to die empty. So
yes.
Like you just feel like you did it all and you tried it all, and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, but at least you tried it. So
yep, absolutely.
Good gracious. I'm like, I feel like I need a nap right now.
Oh no. Well, I don't want to drain you.
I think it's so wonderful. I'm like seriously so inspired. Okay, so I always like to end with asking my interviewees, what would be, if you were going to go back to that bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, 21-year-old Mustang Cal Poly grad, what would be your advice that you would say to her?
Well, I probably should have had a little more patience along the way, but I think, have fun and really absorb those moments to celebrate your successes along the way. and it's all going to work out. It all works out the way that it's supposed to. And sometimes there are moments that you feel like, what am I doing? Or you may doubt yourself, or maybe it's difficult to walk into a room full of designers or full of clients or whatever that may be. But when you trust your gut and really roll with that, I think everything truly works out in the end. But make sure you're having fun along the way versus doubting yourself in any way.
And being so stressed out, I feel like I look back, I'm like, why did I stress about that?
Yeah. And don't live something before it happens up in your head.
Yeah.
Just live the moment. And I think it always turns out better than we ever anticipated. So, and if it didn't, then we're meant to be on a different path in the game. So that's okay too. That's
just great, straight up life advice right there.
Yeah, truly.
Oh, so I'm going to wrap up, but I'm kind of curious. I just feel like I want to throw this out there to you.
Yeah.
There's a question that sometimes I like to ask, just curious. How would you define beauty?
I think it is that laugh out loud. It's either hearing someone laugh out loud and turning and just seeing that vibrance coming from someone, that sunshine coming from someone, and just being comfortable in that skin to enjoy the moments. And, whether you have makeup on or not, we were teasing before, is this going to be televised? My skinny filter and my fan. And I think we can get wrapped up in a lot of the image and the aesthetic of things, especially in interior design. But to have authentic joy is totally gorgeous to me.
Yay! I love it. So great. Well, thank you so much, Kerrie. I'm just, I've connected with you. I've known you for a little while, and you're such a bright light, speaking of, and it's just wonderful to see you doing all of this great stuff. It's just super inspiring and joyful and happy. And I just wish you great success continuing forward.
Well, thank you, Mari. I'm so happy for your podcast and everything that you're doing. And your book sits on my shelf along with many of your paintings and drawings. And I just think you're so talented. So just know you have a big fan in me.
Aw. Okay. Thanks, Kerrie.
Have a great one.
Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like this podcast and you'd like to support it even more, you can join me over on patreon.com/Mari Robeson and become a patron of mine. If you're a patron of mine, you'll receive bonus episodes every month, only for patrons. You'll also receive 20% off all the merchandise in my online shop, marirobeson.bigcartel, and you will be receiving free printables every month that will be of my artwork, and they're some really fun things. You can follow along on Instagram and you can see what I'm creating just for my patrons. I would deeply appreciate it. It would help me keep the lights on, and it would help me pay all the fees that it takes to put together a podcast like this so that I can keep supporting all the artists, keep bringing you great information, keep paying it forward to the next generation of artists. It's just a wonderful thing, and I would really deeply appreciate your support.